Okay. So I'm very glad to announce the Department of English of T.H.K. Jain College is organizing a curriculum enrichment program for the Semester 1 English Honours course of 2021, which includes the selected topic from the CBCS syllabus of University of Calcutta. And it's our privilege to have with us Professor Sunayan Mukherjee as the speaker of today's session. I, Indrila Sengupta, in charge of the Department of English of T.H.K. Jain College, welcome our honorable speaker, Professor Sunayan Mukherjee, our respected principal ma'am, Dr. Moshumi Singh Sengupta, members of the organizing committee, Professor Swara Thakur and Professor Dipan Datta, all the teachers of department, and of course, our dear students of Semester 1 English Honours to this program. Professor Sunayan Mukherjee has completed his post-graduation from Presidency University, Kolkata. Currently, he is pursuing PhD from the University of Burdwan. His doctoral dissertation is on the study of speciality in American literature. He has interest in literary theory and post-humanism studies as well. He is now teaching at Government General Degree College, Chapra, under the University of Kalyani as an assistant professor. To these notes, I would like to add that I had a brief but amazing experience to work with Sunayan when he was the head of the department of this English department of T.H.K. Jain College back in 2017. And he was so cordial as a head and colleague to me when I was very new to this department. Once again, I thank Sunayan for that. And I also like to thank Principal Ma'am as she suggested your name for this event. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Now I would request Principal Ma'am to say a few words to inaugurate this session.
Ma'am, your microphone is not on.
Sorry, dear. Thank you, Indrila, for your nice introduction. Very good. It's a good afternoon to all. I offer my warm welcome to all the participants of today's session that will be delivered by our Professor Sunayan Mukherjee, W.B.E.S, who is presently, as you already know, that he's currently associated to General Degree College in the capacity of assistant professor in the Department of English. Of course, all the students, these are the, as Vendrila mentioned, that all the participants of today's session, which is basically a curriculum enrichment program organized by Department of English, are basically the first semester students. What I like to say about Sunayan Mukherjee, that Sunayan Mukherjee is not new to this institution. He has been a part of this institution from 2014 to 2018. And being a faculty member of Department of English, basically he have had a lot of contribution in developing the academic atmosphere and academic environment of the college. And of course, he has a lot of contribution in in developing different kinds of academic culture, which is basically the new to this institution. Like our students were encouraged to participate in different programs. They are encouraged to present their own paper. It is all about, really, I'm very happy to see after a long time Sunayan. And also we found him a very responsible and very active member of when the college underwent the NAC accreditation process in the year 2016. Really is a very nice person, and above all is a very good teacher as well. So students, what I want to tell you, that being a very good teacher, you interact with him as much as possible for you, because he will answer all the questions. And basically he will be talking on modernism, as department has suggested. And this curriculum enrichment program is basically organized for all the students of all the semesters. just to add some, I mean, because as the advanced knowledge in each and every field is required, and it is basically for advancement of your, I mean, basically the development, means all over, all round development. And to all this, I welcome once again the Professor Sunayan Mukherjee to this institution, and I hope that you will be benefited out of his lecture. Also, I am thankful to the organizer, our in charge department of English, Professor Oindrila Sengupta, Swara Thacker, and of course Deepayan, for organizing this kind of enrichment program for you. So we have lot of programs in future, and hope that how many participants are there? Almost 54. Okay. So we expect this is for first semester students, na? So it's okay. So from next time we'll be doing it for our third, I mean the next third, second year and third year students. Thank you, Sunayan, for accepting our invitation. I'm very happy to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Indrila, for the wonderful introduction. And ma'am, you brought a lot of good, cherished memories, which I always have about the college, the institution, because it has given me a foothold in the academia, and the wonderful colleagues, the students that I had over there. They are a part of my growing process, my conscience, as well as my everyday life. So it's a warm feeling. It's a homecoming experience for me, and I'm very glad to interact with the students of this semester. Although we are meeting in a virtual platform through Google Meet, where we cannot see each other directly, but I will try to make sure that they would not feel left out, because I would try to make them understand the concepts, the nuances, which are very integral in the understanding of the literary experience which they would be going through in the coming 2 or 3 years of their college life. So this is just a sort of an effort. I'm not a sort of expert, or I'm not a what should I say? I have not become a pro in academia as of now, but whatever little comprehension, understanding that I have gathered in my reading process, I am going to share with you. This is a very tricky terrain, the concept of modernism, which there are a lot of ongoing debates about the process, whether it is over, whether we are in the postmodern age, or whether it's a continuation of the high modernism. So I would not go into the technicalities much, because you are very new in this course. Let us enjoy the process instead of using the technical names and the terms. So without much further ado, let us begin. And I would be sharing with you the PowerPoint presentation which I have prepared for you to go through the concepts very briefly. So let us begin this process. So can you see this slide? What is modernism? Can you see it?
Yes, it is visible, Sunayan.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is the title which I have prepared. What is modernism? So it's a sort of a question. It's a sort of a question which I have raised, and which sort of comes up in our mind when we take up this term modernism, the new concepts, the terms. So what is this modernism? Now, usually when we talk about modernism, we associate modernism with literature, painting, music. Okay, so but again, what is the main idea? So is there a key unity or connection that connects all these forms of art that you see? So, and why do we call it as modern? Okay, so let us just briefly map the chronology of modernism. I have used the word map because what is map? Map is a cartography or sort of a referential point from where we draw our inferences. Like if I talk about the map of India, our country, then you can fit in the different states in that map, and from that point you can sort of draw a reference about how close they are from each other, what is the geographical climate, the culture, and everything. So map is essential. So mapping modernism is, briefly speaking, about the modern period. Like you are in the first semester, you are introduced to the history of English literature. Now the history, in that history of English literature, you see that the modern period comes at the very end of your book, towards the very end of the history of English literature. Now that is it has started, or it is categorized to have begun from the early 20th century, and the turn of the 20th century witnessed a lot of social, political, as well as economic changes in the history of Europe. I have boldened this term Europe because we are essentially discussing about the European modernism. Okay, so there are the different other forms of modernisms as well, such as you will come about the Asian, the modernity, the modernism in India, the modernism in China, the modernism in Asian countries, as well as the modernism in, say, Latin America. But we are essentially talking about the modernist movement that has engulfed all across the Europe, the Eurocentric view of the term, because we are talking about the English literature, the history of English literature. And the outbreak of World War I brought forward catastrophic changes in the mindset of people. And at the same time, belief in religion, morality, progress, order, everything was shattered. The artists were caught in this changing vortex, and their works reflected this chaos as they were trying to come to terms to it. So essentially, it is about all these changes which were taking place in the fields of religion, morality, progress, and people were trying to come to terms to it. And in this way, they were trying to express themselves through a new form. Okay, but the question that is important is, did modernism start only in the early 20th century? Now remember that nothing happens all of a sudden. Okay, everything has to have a sort of a connection, a sort of prior understanding, or a prior prior beginning. Nothing happens all of a sudden. Like we always it's a famous joke that says that Einstein once, Isaac Newton, when he was sitting under a tree, an apple fell on his head, and he discovered the theory of gravitation. Okay, so do you think it's a plausible idea? No, it's not, because because Newton was already trying to develop the concept much before. So just like that. So everything starts, nothing starts all of a sudden. So what about the ages preceding to it? And we have divided the history of literature for our own benefit. But we can really fit them into tight compartments. So can we exactly say that the Renaissance started from 1486 after the defeat of the Spanish Armada? Or can we exactly pinpoint the dates, or can we just say that the Romantic period started after the publication of the lyrical ballads? No, we cannot. But what we have done for our own sake is we have divided history into compartments for our own benefit. But can we really do that? Rather, it should be looked on as a flow of events or a continuum. No, the first thing that we have to understand in our study of literature is we have to detrain our mind. Why do I use the term detrain? That is, we have to revise the stereotypical understanding which we were fed from since the childhood. When we used to read the history books in India, the history books of India, like the Mughal Empire, the empire of the Guptas, the Marathas, and so on. So we were taught that the period started from this time and ended in that time. But we always have to understand in terms of literature, in terms of philosophy, because literature is heavily indebted with philosophical questions. There is no such pinpoint accurate beginning marks. So we should not classify it as a fixed compartment, but we should read it as a sort of a continuum, as a flow of events. And our aim shall be to interpret the changes, to join the missing links together and find a pattern in them. So what we are essentially trying to do is we are trying to investigate the gaps, the ruptures that has disturbed this set of chronology in our own way. Okay, so what is history? Now the question has got a variety of answers, but I have chosen Wilhelm Dilthey, the German historian, who has talked about history as the premise of a developmental history is that an event goes through a series of change of which each is possible only on the basis of the previous one. So history is actually a set of events. Okay, a set of events, a set of incidents which happens at a point of time or throughout a point of time, and which are connected with each other. The present is influenced by the previous one. Okay, so why am I discussing it? Because I'm trying to say that modernism or modernity did not happen all of a sudden, but it had a sort of a priori beginning to this particular understanding, to this particular idea. And this is what history is also about. History is about a development. It's a sort of a chronological way of understanding, one after the other. And what is the aim of literature, or the beginning of a modernist vision starts with about the understanding of the culture. Now, when you are studying literature, you have to understand both the culture as well as the historical timeline, as well as the social, economic, and political understanding of the situation in which you are. Like if I say right now, what is happening in our country, what is happening in the world, what is happening just immediately beside your home, okay, at the house of your neighbor, everything is a part of your growth, your development, and your understanding of the culture in which you are. Okay, for example, if I say that
Sorry to interrupt you, Sunayan.
yes.
Can you make it a full screen mode? Your slides.
Okay, ma'am. Full screen mode. Actually, it was. Is it not full screen right now?
Yes, it's now visible. Okay. Now it's visible.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. So it's about the vision of a culture, like in which we are at this present timeline. So if I say that at this point of time the country is going through a crisis, like we see the protests of the farmers in the capital, that is a part of my culture. At the same time, I see that the victory that India had in Australia, the celebration, that is a part of my culture. So I am always connected with the sort of greater understanding of the culture in which I am right now. So this culture of modernism, or this cultural change, did not happen all of a sudden, but as Raymond Williams says, that it was actually a part of a residual culture, the culture which has a continued presence in the present in some form, like fantasy, exotic, ideal of the past. So this idea of modernism as a cultural change, as a cultural sign, was always there in our mind. And the tenets of modern were already existing from the past. Immanuel Kant, in his essay, there is a famous essay by Immanuel Kant which says, "What is enlightenment?" talks about mankind's desire to know, that is saper ode. That is, he says that have the courage to use your own understanding which takes human beings out of the immaturity to enlightenment. Okay, so sapere aude, what Kant says in his essay Enlightenment, is a part of a modernist vision. What is a modernist vision? That is the way in which you are interrogating your own self-imposed immaturity, and you are asking yourself that I have to know, I have to know, I have to know. If you always question this question inside your mind, I have to know, I have to know, you will always be a modern person. You will always be in that step of modernity, in that cycle of modernity, and you will not be, you will not be a dead soul. Okay, so this is a very important, this is an important understanding of starting a modernist vision. And what we will also see is the term seismology. Okay, I'm sure that you are familiar with the term seismology. Seismology is the study of the tremors, the earthquake. Seismograph is the graph which maps or which measures the magnitude of an earthquake. So I have used this term seismology in order to show the cultural shifts, the patterns that were going on in that particular time. Okay, the attempt to record the shifts and displacements of sensibility that regularly occur in the history of art and literature and thought. There is a difference between sense and sensibility. Okay, so there is a difference. What is the difference between sense and sensibility? Now, sense is the physiological capacity of perception, that is the sense of hunger, fear, etc. But sensibility is the awareness of what is happening and using one's wisdom to understand the changes. Now, you have to understand the nuanced definition of sensibility in your understanding of literature. We all have senses, sense of fear, hunger, sense of the happiness. But what shifts the definition of sense towards sensibility is a greater wisdom in which you exercises your sense and you understand the cultural changes that is happening around you. So though at first the word culture was restricted to tending to natural growth of plants like agriculture, after the Industrial Revolution, it became synonymous with civilization. It is the way in which we construe the social reality around us. The social reality is very important because whatever we are doing, we are existing in a society, and the social actions, that is the way in which I react, the way in which I talk, the way in which I dress, the way in which I see everyone, that is the way which makes my culture, which makes my understanding, as well as I am a part of the culture in which I am. So this is a two-way process. And why am I reading? Why am I discussing cultural shifts or seismology with you? Because when you are reading modernism, when you are reading literature, you have to take into account of these cultural changes that were happening in Europe, and you have to understand the changes in your own way. So culture is made up by our social actions, and it became the embodiment of tradition, the artistic record of a society, often indicating the elite section. So what we have to do is map the cultural shifts, the paradigm shifts, the seismic shifts that had happened in the past or that is happening now in order to understand the idea of modernism. Okay, so this is very important because culture, mankind is a product of the culture in which he is, as the great thinker Aristotle had said, is that man is a political being. None of us is apolitical, because politics here is a term which defines the ideas, the greater ideas that are happening in the society, which influences us and by which we influence it as well. So this is a very important understanding, and just keep it in mind that cultural changes, you are a product of the culture and you yourself make a culture. Okay, so this is the term which we will discuss now, the terms between modernity and modernism. Okay, You have to understand the differences between these three terms: modern, modernity, and modernism. What is the difference between modern, modernity, and modernism? The words share a homologous similarity, yet are different from one another. Homologous is, though they sound similar, modern, modernity, and modernism, but always remember that there lies some difference between them. Modernism is variously argued to be a period, style, genre, or a combination of this. Modernity, the word, was first introduced by the great French poet Charles Baudelaire in his essay The Painter of Modern Life, in which he defines modernity as the fashionable, fleeting, contingent in art, in opposition to the eternal, the immutable. Now, I have boldened these words: fashionable, fleeting, and contingent. Now, you have to understand that modernity, the sense of modernity, always escapes us. It is always in a state of flux, in a state of change. Okay, so modern, we have to delve deep into this term modernity. That is, it is not just now, but what is just now. Okay, there is a difference between now and just now. What is the difference? The difference in the time. Modernity is quicker. Modernity is more sort of changing, fleeting, as Baudelaire has said. That is, you cannot grasp it, you cannot hold it, you cannot keep it in a fixed place, in a compartment, but which is always changing. It is always shape shifting. It is always a protean instinct which shifts continuously, second after second. Okay, and which is opposition to the eternal, the immutable. Eternal is something which is fixed, which is unchanged. So modernity always changes. It is not the fixed. What is immutable? The eternal. The eternal is the idea of say a way of looking at art. Okay, let me give you an example. Very recently, I have seen that people are using. Suppose there is a song of some olden time, and someone has introduced some new lyrics into that song and made it a new song altogether. Okay, so that song, the immutable, the eternal, that is changed into a different form. Okay, so I know this is a very difficult example for me to give, but always keep this in mind, that modernity and the modern, the difference is in the sense of the timing, from now to just now, as Raymond Williams had said later on. So by modernity, I mean the ephemeral, the fugitive, the contingent, the half of art whose other half is the eternal, the immutable. Okay, so there is this sense of urgency, there is this sense of change which is there. And what Raymond Williams has said, that modern began to appear as a term more or less synonymous with now in the late 16th century, and in any case used to mark the period off from medieval and ancient times. But by the time Jane Austen was using it with a characteristically qualified inflection, she could define it in Persuasion as a state of alteration, perhaps of improvement. But her 18th century contemporaries wed modernism and modernist without her irony to indicate updating and improvement. In the 19th century, it began to take on a more favorable and progressive ring. Ruskin's Modern Painters was published in 1846, and Turner became the type of a modern painter for his demonstration of a distinctively up-to-date quality of truth to nature. And very quickly, modern shifted its reference from now to just now, or even then, and for some time has been a designation always going into the past, with which contemporary may be contrasted for its presentness. Now, this is very important. It's not just the present, but the presentness, which says the presentness of the present is the immediacy of the present, the now, the just now. So modernism as a title for a whole cultural movement and moment has been retrospective as a general term since the 1950s. Now, this is taken from his book, When Was Modernism? His essay, When Was Modernism, which was published in the New Left Review. So just get this clear in your mind, that modernism started to address the questions of just now, the immediate. What has happened just now, 2-3 minutes back, 5 minutes back, 1 hour back, and which is old, but what is happening just now, again an anticipation of the future. So there is a sense of urgency to arrest the time in their art, in their action, in their books, in their movies. And this is the struggle which the modernists are trying to do. The word modern comes from the Latin word modo, which means current. So if modern was something new, modernism was about experimentation and a process of making it new every time in every new way. It's not just a break with the past, but a new which has its echo in the present. It's considered to be a way of living that has arisen with the changes of industrialization, urbanization, and secularization. Its characteristics are disintegration, fragmentary, and locates itself in an ephemerality and insecurity. So what is the essential idea of this? That is, the modern is a sort of fragmentary existence. What is fragmentary? Broken down. There is no single whole, but there are multiple parts. It's a sort of disintegration. Disintegration is again breaking down. And ephemerality. Ephemerality is nothing but this now and lost. The essential nature of that which is not fixed in its own, ephemeral, that which is changing. And insecurity. The central question of time, speed, being, meaning, existence were reinterpreted time and again by the philosophers as well as the writers of the time. Now these are the very important questions. The central questions are that of time, that of speed, that of being. Being is your own existence. Okay. There is a great German philosopher which you would read about later on. His name was Martin Heidegger, who had written a book called Being and Time, in which he questions the understanding of being, saying that so far philosophy has said that we are beings, but what is this being? We say that we are human beings, but what is being? B-E-I-N-G, being. Is it to live? If being is only to live, then what is it only just about living, or is it about living with a higher conscience or a higher form of knowledge of our own being? So the questioning, to question the being is the question that started to come up. Being, meaning, existence were reinterpreted time and again by the philosophers as well as the writers of the time. Now, this is very important. The attitude was that of being critical. I always tell my students that you have to be critical of everything around you. You have to be critical of your own existence. You have to be critical, suspicious about what is happening around you. Always question what is happening around you. Why is it happening? Never take down the accepted versions of truth that goes about us. Rather, if you question them, you would see that there is an order, there is a power structure which asks you to accept those truths without questioning them. I remember a very famous song by Pink Floyd which says that it's a protest song which says that we don't need no education. And what is the tagline of the song? It says that, hey teachers, leave us kids alone, all in all you are another just brick in the wall. I always say that don't just be another brick in the wall, but rather question what is happening around, what is happening alongside you in the world, in the society. So it's that idea of suspicion, doubt, disbelief and despair which is the essential hallmark of a modernist understanding. To be a modernist, you have to have suspicion, doubt, disbelief and despair. You cannot accept the laid down versions of truth. So modernism is now, let us come to the skeleton structure of modernism. It is that which repudiates cultural authority. Repudiate is to deny, to disavow, that is to refuse a cultural authority. What is a cultural authority? Cultural authority talks about the superiority and the inferiority of a culture. Okay, the superior, the inferior, the high, the low, the powerful, the repressed. Okay, so modernism talks about the refusal of a cultural authority. The modernists believed that they would create a new culture of their own. They would create a new form of art, a new form of literature of their own, without taking into account that the way these things were written, painted, or interpreted in the past. They would try to break the fixed forms. They would try to break the bourgeois taste. Bourgeois is a term which is used by the German thinker Karl Marx, as you know. By bourgeois, Marx talks about the essential high culture elite group of people who, according to their own choices, define the tastes, the production of the society. Bourgeois control the means of production, and bourgeois, the essential, the power of the bourgeois, they is obtained by exploiting the proletariat class. So modernism talks about the repudiation of a bourgeois taste, the necessity of market popularity. So modernism essentially tries to break all these four things together: cultural authority, fixed forms, bourgeois taste, and necessity of a market popularity. So modernity is a matter of sensibility. To be modern is to be aware of the contemporary scenario as changed by the growth of knowledge, a sensitive perception of the world in the present state of knowledge. Let us see what happened in the last quarter of the 20th century. Okay, the 19th century, the last quarter of the 19th century. What happens at the very end? This is a French term, which is fin de siècle. Fin de siècle is the end of the century. Fin is the end, and siècle is the century. Fin de siècle. What happened is, in 1895, the Lumiere brothers invented cinematography. Röntgen, as you know, the great scientists, William Röntgen discovered X-rays, and Marconi invented wireless telegraph. So these are the changes, the discoveries that were happening in the scientific field. Okay, in 1897, Thomson discovered electron. In 1898, the Curies discovered radium. Okay, Pierre Curie, Marie Curie. And in 1905, the first motion picture theater was opened in Pittsburgh. In 1910, the first wireless communication between Europe and America was established. So this was the scientific scenario. What happened in the philosophical scenario is Bergson, Bradley, Nietzsche, and William James. These are the four pretty important philosophers. All agreed that intellectual formations are simply practical instruments for arranging the sensory flux in a convenient manner. They attacked the 19th century positivistic certainty. Okay, what is positivism? There is a branch in philosophy which believes in the cause and effect. Positivism is about the scientific understanding of truth. There is an event is happening, there is a cause, and that is the effect. But what the modernists are trying to suggest is there is no such positivistic certainty that exists around us, as Bergson believed that intuition is more important than rationalism and identifies art with the recovery of immediate emotions. Okay, so intuition is the knowledge that we gain from the surroundings. That is more important than the rationality. Okay, and Nietzsche identifies with the creation of... Yes.
This is Oindril. I'm very sorry to interrupt. Actually, the slides are not moving. That's why probably you are in the full screen mode. That's why
Yes.
It's stuck in a place. So,
okay. So is it visible now?
Is it the slide 15, the philosophical scenario?
Yes, it's the slide 15.
Yes. Now it is now moving now. So I think it's just for the full screen mode.
Okay. So now it's okay. I thought that full screen would be more visible to the students. Okay.
No, actually it got stuck.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. You continue. Please continue.
Yes. So this is the philosophical scenario for Nietzsche. He identifies that the world is not just what is being dictated by the religion and the morality. Okay. Rather, in his very famous statement, he used to say that God is dead. The death of God signifies the death of all rationality, order, religion, knowledge, and the predetermined forms of truth. So this is a very critical understanding. I will not jargonize your mind, or I will not sort of create more sort of baggages in your mind, but I would just say that be critical of what you are reading. So this is Friedrich Nietzsche, and for William James, art is at once invention and discovery. Okay, we all know the great biologist Charles Darwin, who talks about the human being popularly conceived as a fallen angel, but there is no such fallen angel. Rather, we are a cultured ape. So Darwin overturned the idea of the biblical creation of man, and in the year 1859, his seminal book, The Origin of Species, was published, which shook the foundation of religion and morality in the human beings. Earlier, when a child was born, he used to be taken to the church, but the credentials of that knowledge, when he came to know, when mankind came to know that we have come from apes, there is no God. So what about the feelings? What about the hopes? What about the religion? Everything was shattered. Next, we have in popular culture, in the popular conception of history before Marx, the individual would play an important part. But after Marx published his Das Kapital, the Capital, it says that we are a product of the economic exploitation of the bourgeois. The bourgeois class, they control the units of production, the factors of production, and the proletariat sells their labor. So what is essential is Marx talks about a classless society, the forms of communism. So this idea also gave an impetus to the modernist movement, which looked upon individuals as equals. If the popular conception of human action before Freud had been based upon a possibility of self-knowledge, of presence of mind, the interpretation of dreams, and the psychopathology of everyday life, established the disturbing fact that one could never really know more than the ostensible reasons for such an action. Now, when Sigmund Freud published his seminal book, The Interpretation of Dreams, he says that there exists an unconscious in all of our minds. That unconscious we do not know. We will never be able to know that unconscious because it acts out through dreams, through jokes, and through Freudian slips. So what are we then? Modernism talks about this fundamental question. This takes the fundamental question that who are we then if we are not created by God? If we are all equal, if we are the product of an exploitative forces around, if we are not what we say, what we speak in our conscious mind, but what we are in the unconscious, what are we then? What is our existence? Remember, I had said about the question of being, the foundation of being. René Descartes, the famous philosopher, had said that I think, therefore I am. You think, therefore you are. But the modernists question that thinking, that understanding. Is it true what you think? Is that what you are? Or are there multiple selves behind that individual I? Okay. I remember a very famous folk song in Bengali which says, Tomar ghore boshot kore koye jona mon jano na. That is, you don't know how many individuals lie inside your one personality. Okay. So just like that, so Sigmund Freud's very interesting study of the dreams, the psychopathology of everyday life, wherein he says that the individuals don't know what they are. So these are the two very famous philosophers, Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud. And Marx and Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, and he talks about the class struggle, the social conflict, the inevitable historical rise of capitalism, the evolution of socialism, and as I said, Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams, which argued that dreams are the product of repressed desires. Now, this is a very important term, repressed desire, that which you cannot express yourself in the rationality, in the rational world, the social world in which you are, you repress those desires in your unconscious, and the unconscious becomes a repertoire, a receptacle of those repressed desires, and those repressed desires come out in different forms. And he talks about the three layers: the unconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious mind. Okay, so these are the essential tenets which makes up the hallmarks of modernist literature, which we would discuss later on as well, like the influences of Freud, the influences of Marx, the influences of Nietzsche. How did it happen? Okay, among the writers, this is Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher. Always remember Friedrich Nietzsche. Let's be honest, what doesn't kill you actually leaves you crippled, he says. And the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, okay, Ferdinand de Saussure, who talks about the idea of how the language is built. So Nietzsche talked about Übermensch, who is above societal morality. Nietzsche talks about mankind to rise up from this sense of ignorance, darkness, believing in God, superstition, morality, and challenge our understanding to a higher form of man, the will to power, which makes us create our own world in our own way. So this is also a very important fundamental tenets of understanding modernism. And as you see that he wrote a very famous book, The Birth of Tragedy, which divided experience into two categories: the Dionysian, the aesthetic pleasure, and the Apollonian, or the rational discourse. So we are always hanging, or we are always dancing between the two polarities of the Apollonian and the Dionysiac. The Apollonian, which is the creative, the rational part, which comes from our mind, and the Dionysiac, the aesthetic, the rebellious man. Okay, so the dance of the dialectics, the hierarchies. Okay, and Ferdinand de Saussure, he talks about this idea of the linguistics, how we are a product of the language. Okay, that is, when I say the word tree, the concept, the image of a tree comes in your mind, as well as the idea of a tree, the sound of the tree, that is the tree. Okay, so when we are a young child, we are trained in the language. Why? Because language is the way in which we express ourselves in the world. Okay, if, for example, you say that I want to drink water, the sentence has a meaning. Now replace water with oil. I want to drink oil. Immediately the sentence changes its meaning. Okay, so what differentiates water and oil is the sound image as well as the concept image. Now this is what modernists would try to experiment with, the idea of language, because as you see that a very famous philosopher later on, Jacques Derrida, will say that it is the language which speaks through us, but not we are speaking the language. Like, we are not in command of what we say, but we are a product of the order of the language in which you are. So I would not go very deep, because it would digress us again. So this idea of modernism, if we trace the beginning, there are a lot of debates. Like D.H. Lawrence says that it was in 1915 that the old world ended. Virginia Woolf, in his essay on Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Brown, says that on or about December 1910, human nature changed. So these are all very vague understandings, because everyone has tried to sort of map modernism in his own way. So 1900, Richard Ellman says that both more convenient and more accurate. Harry Levin says that I would like to fix it to 1922, the year of the rich literary harvest, Ulysses' Wasteland, Lawrence's Aaron's Rod, and Woolf's Jacob's Room. These are very, very seminal texts which were published in the year 1922, which some people like Harry Levin believes that it was the annus mirabilis year, or the rich harvest year of modernism. Okay, so all these things comes down to the point of what exactly is modernism. So far what we have what we have discussed is modernism is a part of the cultural change in which we are in. Modernism is about a new sensibility. Modernism is about the idea of suspicion. Modernism is about the idea of change from now to just now. And modernism was influenced by the philosophical traditions which started from Immanuel Kant, Friedrich Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx, Ferdinand de Saussure, and last but not the least, I have not included him in the list, is Albert Einstein's idea of relativity as well, because what exactly relativity suggested us is everything changes according to the perspective. Now, Einstein, to justify his idea of relativity, had given a very interesting example, saying that suppose you are waiting for your beloved at a bus stop, then 5 minutes seems like 5 hours. Similarly, when you have gone out with your beloved and you are eating, suppose eating at a restaurant, or say you have gone to a movie, or you are spending time, then 5 hours seems like 5 minutes. So everything is relative. Everything changes its meaning as per the sociological, the economic, the political, the cultural position in which all of us are in. So this idea of relativity also goes back to this idea of the changing nature of time, of meaning, of everything. So what is modernism then? The technical features is anti-representationalism in painting, atonalism in music, vers libre, and stream of consciousness in narrative. We would go into all these things, details, in our next lecture as well. So anti-representationalism is, in a very one-line statement, is you are not exactly representing what you are seeing, but you are representing something else. Like there is a distinction between the use of lights, the use of colors, the use of symbolism, atonalism, vers libre, the free verse, and the stream of consciousness. And modernism, remember, as Malcolm Bradbury had said, is not art's freedom, but art's necessity. Okay, so modernism is not a freedom, but it was a necessity of art. And we think we understand each other, but we never really do understand. It's written by Luigi Pirandello, an Italian playwright, in his famous play, 6 Characters in Search of an Author. So modernism is about this idea of suspicion, about this idea of not understanding each other exactly, accurately. Okay, so we don't know what we are saying. Okay, we don't know what we want to say, and we don't know how to say it. So we are living in a sort of crippled time. Okay, so modernity and modernism. This man, Charles Baudelaire, the famous French poet, he says he wrote a very famous book which was titled Les Fleurs du Mal, okay, the flowers of evil, which is considered as the hallmark of a modernist text, the beginning of the French modernism, wherein he celebrates the idea of the gross, the offal, the sort of decaying things that is happening around us, and he celebrates it and upholds it to the rich pedestal of beauty, aesthetics, beauty. Remember, Baudelaire has says that what we call as traditional aesthetics. Suppose if I give my beloved a rose on the auspicious occasion of the Valentine's Day, that is aesthetic. That is considered to be a sort of aesthetic exchange, aesthetic value as a gift. But for Baudelaire, he would say that there is nothing aesthetic in a rose. Instead, I can give something which is very gross or very offal. So something like I can give my own. I can give something like a very neglected gift, like a flower which grows just beside a gutter. Okay, which is very beautiful, but which apparently has got no such aesthetic value in it. Okay, there is a very famous poem by Charles Baudelaire, wherein he talks about insects, the larvae that are coming out of a dead woman's body corpse, and he says to his beloved that my dear, one day we will also die and worms will feast over our dead bodies. So that is a different way of writing romantic poem, and he is adding this strangeness which is a necessary ingredient in beauty. Okay, the movement that is associated with this modernism is avant-garde, which is also a French term. Avant-garde means advance guard, and this is a sort of cultural realm. Avant-garde represents a pushing of the boundaries of what is accepted as the norm or the status quo, primarily in the cultural realm, and the notion of the existence of the avant-garde is considered by some to be a hallmark of modernism. Okay, so let's read a very famous prose poem of Charles Baudelaire, and this is a prose poem because it is this is written in verse. This is written in prose form, and this is collected in his book Paris Spleen. Okay, it says that the shriveled little old woman felt delight in seeing the pretty baby everyone fussed over, the one everyone wanted to please. This pretty creature, as fragile as she, the little old man, and the little old woman, and also like her, without teeth or hair. So apparently there is a similarity between the old woman and the newborn baby, without hair, without teeth, and everyone was fussing over the little baby. And she went up to the child, planning to make little smiles and cheerful faces for him. But the frightened child struggled under the caresses of the decrepit good woman and filled the whole house with his yelps. Then the good old woman turned back to her eternal solitude, and she wept in a corner, saying to herself, "Ah, for us miserable old females, the era of pleasing even the innocent ones is over, and we arouse only horror in the little children we want to love." So this is what is the idea of strangeness was said earlier. Apparently, the old woman, when she tries to take the newborn baby, the baby cries out of fear, and the old woman faces despair. We are miserable. The era of pleasing the innocent ones is over. So this is a modernist way of writing. This is a modernist way of understanding. This is a modernist way of representing the beauty which is there in the old woman as well as in the newborn baby. And when they are meeting with each other, there emanates a shock, a surprise, a chaos. Okay, so this was an example. So there is the other trope of modernism, which involves the use of symbols. Okay, the symbols is a word which has a sort of different meaning altogether in it. The modernists use a lot of symbols. Okay, symbolism is is a way of revealing a mood or the art of choosing an object and extracting from it an état d'âme. Okay, the mood which is there in the symbolism. Okay, suppose let's read these 4 lines by T.S. Eliot, which says, "They are rattling breakfast plates in the basement kitchen, and along the trampled edges of the street, I am aware of the damp souls of housemaids sprouting despondently at area gates." So the symbols that he uses here is breakfast plates, basement kitchen, and the damp souls. Okay, so all these words, they are not just the immediate meaning which they convey, but they carry a greater meaning of their own. And the modernists were an expert in using the symbols to hide the real meanings of that which they want to express or to convey. Okay, the idea of the poet as a flaneur, that is the one who is wandering everywhere. The modernist poet is always in search of a new surprise, and he is ideally a lonely soul. As Charles Baudelaire says, that not everyone is capable of immersing himself in the multitude, as in a bath, enjoying the crowd is an art. Okay, this is very important. Enjoying the crowd is an art, and the only ones who make a feast of vitality out of the human race are those who in their cradles had a fairy breathe into them a taste for disguise and masks, hatred for home life, and the passion for travel. Okay, the passion for travel, multitude, solitude terms that are equivalent and interchangeable for the active and fertile poet. He who does not know how to people his solitude will not know how to be solitary in a busy crowd. So this is very important. He who does not know how to people his solitude will not know how to be solitary in a busy crowd. So the poet is alone as well as in company. Okay, and he is essentially busy in his own world of creativity. Okay, and the modernists are they express the poetry of decadence. Decadence is very important. Decadence, the term signifies the decay, the deadness, the dampness, the destruction, the ennui, the boredom that happens all around. Remember, if Romanticism was the age of positivism, the age of hope, the age of liberation, with modernism, it is the age of decadence, the age of disease, the age of decay. Okay, the age of a perversity. Okay, so why would it not be? Why would it not happen? Because if you have to understand that they were witnessing a great world war and all the cultural and the societal changes which we had discussed earlier. So the response naturally to them was about the disease, the decadence, the negativity, and the idea of doubt and suspicion. Okay, these are the different literary movements which are associated with modernism. One is called Vorticism, okay, which began in 1912 by the painter and writer Wyndham Lewis, and it produced a magazine called Blast, and which talks about poly-expressivity. Imagism, another movement which started with Ezra Pound, Amy Lowell, T.E. Hume, and they believed that a hard, clear image was essential to verse, and they also believed that poetry should use the language of everyday speech and have complete freedom in subject matter. And Pound edited the first anthology, Des Imagistes, the Imagists, okay, the edited anthology of Pound, Ezra Pound, wherein he talks about a movement saying, make it new. Modernism is about breaking the stereotype, as we had discussed earlier, and writing a new form of poetry using imagism. Imagism is again another form of symbolism, wherein you use 3-4 images, you write images, and you leave it to the readers to understand. Okay, let us see the movements in art. One is called the Impressionism. Okay, Impressionism was a 19th century art movement that originated with a group of Paris-based artists. Okay, the most famous of them would be Claude Monet. Okay, Claude Monet, Paul Cézanne. Okay, and Manet, Edouard Manet. Okay, and all other famous painters. And just see that characteristics of Impressionist paintings include relatively thin yet small visible brushstrokes, open composition, emphasis on accurate depiction of light in its changing qualities, often accentuating the effects of the passage of time, common ordinary subject matter, the inclusion of movement. This is a very important term, the movement, because remember, as we had discussed, that modernism is about from now to just now. So these impressionists were trying to capture this idea of movement in paintings, which we have not seen in, say, in the Renaissance paintings or say in the Romantic paintings. Okay, because this idea of movement was not existing at that point of time, but for the modernist painters, for the modernist artists, this movement is very important. And this is a crucial element of human perception and experience and unusual visual angles. The development of Impressionism in the visual arts was soon followed by analogous styles in other media, which became known as Impressionist music and Impressionist literature. So remember that this idea of movement was captured in the Impressionist painters, and they used this idea of brushstrokes. Okay, Let's see a very famous Impressionist painting by Claude Monet. Okay, this painting is called Soleil levant. Le soleil levant. Soleil is the sun. Okay, the sun rising. Okay, so you can see here that there is the sun which is rising, and a boatman is using his ferry to cross the river. There are some factory chimneys which are billowing out smoke, and the sunrise is not clear. But as you can see that the painting is finished in a hurry. The painter is trying to capture the immediacy of the time. As you can see, the small brushstrokes in the waves, and the sky is a bit muddy, and the water is also a bit muddy because he is not getting the time to finish the painting properly, or maybe he wants to give an exact representation of what he's seeing in his eye. This is a very famous painting by Claude Monet. The name Impressionism, it has a small history which goes something like this, that these painters, Claude Monet, W.B.E.S, Manet, they were trying to hold an exhibition in the Central Paris, and a journalist came to their art, and after viewing their paintings, he wrote a review saying that these paintings represent the impressions made by a child on a canvas without a sort of well-marked brushstrokes. So as you can see, there is no finished brushstrokes here, but everything seems very incomplete, and that is the hallmark of Impressionism. Let's see the next painting. This is called Le Meul à Giverny, the Stacks of Giverny. Le Meul à Giverny is a 25 series of paintings which Claude Monet continued from summer of 1890 to the following spring to illustrate the light and atmosphere in different times of the day. This is a series of 25 paintings. Now, Monet had these haystacks in front of him, and he had a canvas, and every morning he used to paint one haystack the way the sunlight would fall on the haystacks, and he would be in a hurry to finish the paintings because he wanted to capture the exact way, the exact representation of light, the exact manner of the light and the shadow which is happening in his paintings. Now this is a very famous painting as well, Le Meul à Giverny. The next one is by Renoir, okay, by Renoir and Auguste, Pierre Auguste Renoir, and his painting is titled Fille avec le cercle, or the girl with the hoop. As you can see, this is a girl, a young girl, who is having a sort of a skipping rope with him. Now look at these lines. Because the skipping rope is in motion, he has not painted this rope as a definite circle, but as a haze. And look at the background. Because the girl is hopping, because the girl is skipping, the background is also in a haze, and the girl's legs, this part, and the hands, this part is not very clear, because this is a deliberate attempt by Auguste Renoir as he tries to capture the time in his painting. Remember, as we had said, according to Raymond Williams, modernism is a shift from now to just now. So Renoir is also trying to do the shift from the painting. This is not a traditional stereotypical representation of a girl with a skipping rope, but a girl who is in motion, who is always performing the act of skipping. Pierre Auguste Renoir, Fille avec le cercle. Next one is once again by Pierre Auguste Renoir, and the title is Le Parapluie, or the umbrella. Okay, look at this woman. She has a bag. This woman, and the background, the faces are not very clear because the focal point is this particular woman. So this is also trying to capture the time in the painting. This is Edouard Degas, and this is before the race. Okay, yeah, the Degas painting shows this horse, and they are trying to begin a race. So this is also the chiaroscuro effect, the light and darkness effect, which is there in the painting, which makes it a sort of impressionist painting as well. This is Alfred Sisley. These are all a group of French painters, Edouard Degas, and this one is Alfred Sisley, who is this painting. As you can see, the waves in the lake, they are not very clear because they are deliberately left in a sort of flux. Okay. Next is this is a sort of comparison which I have shown. This is Titian, Vener, the Urbino, which you can see that the figure of the woman is more well represented here, whereas in Edouard Manet's Olympia, the bed sheet, look at the bed sheet, here it is, this is the difference, like in the classical painters, Titian was a classical painter, he had a sort of accurate description of a courtesan's chamber, but Monet represents a courtesan who is more of a poor background and who does not have the luxury to look after herself. So we see crumpled bed sheets around, and we see her figure is also not very well painted in well color, the use of brightness, but which has a sort of pale texture which shows the poverty around. Okay, so this was Impressionism. The next is Futurism. It is also a movement which talks about the future society, the concepts of future, speed, technology, youth, violence, and the exponent of Futurism was Italian Futurism, Filippo Marinetti, and Russian Futurism, Vladimir Mayakovsky. Okay, let us see the hallmark of this painting. This is a painting by Giacomo Bella. Something which has a lot of speed where nothing is clearly visible, abstract speed and sound. Then there is the German Expressionism, which happens also at the same point of time of the modernist period. We see Franz Marc, the large blue horses in 1911. Okay, this is a sort of German Expressionism. As you can see that the horses, look at the shapes of the horses. The large blue horse. First of all, is there a blue horse in reality? No, we do not see such blue horses in reality, but it is a form of expression, of freeing oneself again from the stereotypical idea of looking at a horse. Okay, there is this Dadaism which began in Zurich during the World War, and Dadaism is a movement which primarily looked into visual arts, literature, poetry, art manifestos, art theory, theater, and graphic design, and concentrated its anti-war politics through the rejection of prevailing standards, and its purpose was to ridicule the meaningless of the modern world. Okay, so Dadaism is also a sort of anarchic, anti-bourgeois and anarchic in nature, and the famous painting of the Dadaism, okay, Hannah Hock, cut with the Dada kitchen knife through the last Weimar beer. This is a collage. This is a collage of different cutouts, and the painter Hannah Hock, the artist, had done this with his creation. Okay, the next important movement in modernist painting is Cubism, which was pioneered by Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque, okay, which influenced in European paintings, okay, art and literature. As you see that Pablo Picasso was a very famous painter, and he was trying to intersect seemingly random angles, removing a coherent sense of depth. Okay, this is what Picasso experimented in his painting. That is, he wanted to challenge the idea of depth, the background and object planes. Okay, which create a shallow ambiguous space, one of Cubism's distinct features. So background and object planes interpenetrate one another. Okay, so there is no such form, there is no such definite shape. Let's see what Picasso paints. Now this is Paul Cézanne, the large bathers, where you can see distinct shapes clearly. But this is Pablo Picasso's Les Demoiselles, the Avino. The same painting, but with a different experience, but with a different flavor altogether. As you can see that if you see this painting from this particular side, you would get a different perspective of this woman standing. If you see it from the front, you would see a different perspective if you see it from this side. So this painting is actually more open oriented towards the audience. So this is a revolution. This is a way how a painting can be modernized by the use of the new techniques. Okay, by gazing. He employs the idea of the gazing, the perspective. Okay, that is what distinguishes Picasso from Cézanne. This is also a very famous painting by Picasso titled The Three Musicians. Now, you cannot exactly pinpoint who the three musicians over here are, but if you look at it carefully, you would see that there is this musical instrument which this man, or which this shape is holding. Picasso deliberately changes this idea, the way in which we look at the image of a man, the image of a musician. Now, when you look at this painting, you are starkly in a shock, because you don't know what to expect from this painting. Okay, this is Georges Braque, Violin and Candlestick. This is also another painting, and this is the most famous of all, Pablo Picasso's Guernica. Okay, when asked about the history of this painting, Picasso says that it is as a result of the Spanish Civil War, okay, which started, and there is no other option because there is war everywhere. There is no such meaning in this painting. Absolutely, there is the bulb which hangs overhead. There are the beheaded shapes, the forms, the disjointed structures, but we don't know what actually the meaning is, because it is interspersed with symbolism. There are a lot of symbolist imageries involved over here, the head of a horse over here, and if we look at it carefully, we would see that this is the greatest representation of an anti-war painting by Pablo Picasso. Okay, so let's come to the last end of this lecture, which talks about surrealism, the surrealist movement by André Breton and Salvador Dali, which is also another hallmark of modernism. This is Dali's famous painting, The Persistence of Time, where you can see the clocks have melted over here. There is what Dali is actually trying to talk is this sort of painting he conceived in his dream while he was asleep. Now, when we dream, is there a sense of chronological time which happens in our mind? No. Maybe when we wake up in the morning, we look at the watch and we see, oh, I have just slept for 5 hours, but in my dream, as if I was in a tunnel, I was going on endlessly without a purpose, and I don't know how much time I had slept. So if you have seen the famous movie by Christopher Nolan titled Inception, he has also tried to work on this idea of dream, on this idea of the fluidity of time that happens in our dream. And Dali had painted this fluid time in his painting, The Persistence of Time. Okay, this is another famous painting which is titled Swans. Okay, if you see this painting carefully, here this particular shapes looks like a swan, but if you look down, you would see that they represent elephant faces as well. So this is the swans. When they are reverted, when they are turned upside down, they become like elephants. Okay, so this is a sort of of a painting which happens in the dream world. This if you can see that this is the elephant's face is clearly visible, and on top they become swans. So what are we actually looking? Is it the elephant or is it the swan? We don't know. Okay, because in our dreams, in the surrealist state of mind, we don't know what we are thinking. Again, going back to the idea of modernism, which says that there is no individual unique I which is there, but we are a multiple amalgamations of the different I's that are there inside us. This is another famous painting, which is Dream Caused by the Flight of a Bee Around a Pomegranate, a second before awakening. Very interesting picture, as you can see that this is a woman who maybe is sleeping and maybe she is dreaming, and the tigers are coming, there is elephant up, and this is a pomegranate. Okay, so from a pomegranate, the seeds, as if it has burst forth, and it has taken the form of a tiger which is approaching a prey, and this is a gun. Okay, maybe the gun is being wielded by the tiger. The tiger is pointing the gun to the man and saying, something else. Okay, so this is a very, very interesting painting altogether. The famous painting by Salvador Dali. Okay, the last one of this session today is this lobster telephone. Okay, lobster telephone is a surrealist object created by Dali in 1936 for the English poet Edward James, a leading collector of surrealist art. So if you can see, it's a surrealist surrealist sort of creation where you have where you see that the handle of a telephone is that of a lobster. Okay, the lobster telephone. Okay, so this is what I had tried to present to all of you in this brief lecture today, because it's very difficult for me to sort of I tried in this first initial discussion to give you a sort of idea about the modernist movement, the tenets of modernism, the hallmarks of modernism, the idea of modernism, and how it started, why it started, and the essential differences that it did, or it was how it was different from the past. So in this lecture, I tried to present this sort of brief synopsis with you all, and in the next lecture, maybe we will discuss in more detail about the influences in modernism as a movement in the different literary authors, in the authors that you would read in poetry, in novel, in drama, and how or whether we are still continuing the modernism in our today's world as what we call in a different way, which is postmodern. So this was a sort of introductory session, and I hope that it would be very helpful for you to read in your next class, and I'm sure you would be more interested to look up to all these details in your own way and search for the questions. Always remember that you have to be curious. What Kant said, that sapere ode, that is, you have to proceed from your own self-incurred sense of immaturity to that of maturity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunayan, for such a nuanced and overwhelming talk. I am sure that students will get benefited and they will be interested to look into this modernism with new hope and understanding. And I'm really eagerly waiting for the second part of your lecture. So thank you very much. Now we'll have an interactive session where students will ask their questions. So I request all the students to post their questions through the chat box, and this session will be moderated by Professor Swara Thakur.
Yeah.
Thank you, Indruladi, and thank you, Sunayan. The lecture was really good. Actually, modernism is also my area of specialization, so I could understand everything. It was a kind of revision for me also.
Okay.
Very, very interesting. And I really hope that the students benefit from this. This knowledge that they just got, it would come in handy when they study the texts in the 5th and 6th semester specifically. Because there we'll have specific texts from this period. It will really come in handy then, this knowledge. So students, I request all of you, please start putting forward your questions in the chat box, and I will relay those questions to Sir. Okay? Don't feel shy at all. We'll get all your questions answered, okay? Please put forward any query that you have, any doubt, get it clarified. Okay, so far I don't see any query.
What happened to our students? What happened to our students? Sunayan sir has explained, and he has told that you have to be critical in each and every respect. So you must have some questions to ask Sunayan sir. Are you sleeping? Probably they have
No.
understood everything.
Yes, ma'am, that's the
And
thing. They
probably
must have
they are
understood.
shy because they are in first semester, so they
Yes.
are. I mean, they are not very comfortable in asking the question. Anyway, really, Sunayan, it was your lecture was very amazing, and I've also attended
Yes,
all
ma'am.
the
That's
whole
my
session.
privilege,
Really enjoyed it. Really
because
enjoyed it.
you have taken your time out of your busy schedule and you have given us such wonderful time. And
No, no. Okay, our teachers, Oindila, Swara, Deepayon, they are also very good faculty members of our
yes, ma'am.
department. You know, Oindila also. They are putting a lot of. Anyway, this is some additional knowledge they have gained. And I expect that in next session, you have your next lecture on 19th, na?
19th. Yes, ma'am.
We expect all the students will attend the session.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Swara,
Yes, ma'am. I'll
next.
just. Okay, I don't see any queries in the chat box. That means you all have understood. So, if you have any queries that you get reminded of later, then you may ask those questions in the next session. All right. So, now I'll just hand over the microphone to Deepayon for the vote of thanks. Deepayon, you're there? Okay. I don't think he's here. Deepan, you're not audible. Maybe there is some technical issue. No, Deepan, you're not audible. Okay, we'll just wait for a couple of minutes. He'll return.
No. Some problem is there. You're not hearing.
Oh, Indralati, should I then take over? I'll give the vote of thanks
Yes,
then.
yes, please do, please do.
Okay, so basically the formal vote of thanks, elaborate one, will come at the end of the next session. But for today's session, thank you so much for enriching us with all this information, for giving such a detailed background of the modern period and the concepts of modernism, modernity. And I really hope that the students use this knowledge in their answers and enrich their answers to get more marks. So
Yes.
for this vote of thanks, we'll just keep it for the next session. The final vote of thanks, we'll keep it for the next session. Today's session, we'll just end it by saying that the students have to be there for the part 2 of the session. All right. The students already know. It's just a reminder that on 19th, we'll have the second part of this session. And the time is same, from 12 to 1:30. The link is also the same. So please be there, all of you. We want the same kind of participation, but we also expect more questions. Today there were no questions, which was very surprising. And we are just taking it in a positive way by thinking that you have understood everything. But please do come forward with questions or at least comments, okay? How did you find the session? At least tell us that. We need your feedback also for the future sessions. So please be more responsive. You are very responsive in classes generally. I don't know what is wrong today, but please, in the next session, we expect more responsiveness from your side. So thank you, Shunoenda.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Swara.
session once again.
And all of you over here, thank you, Principal Ma'am. We would continue our discussion in the next lecture. And I think, yeah, maybe the students, because they cannot see us directly, the face contact is not there. Maybe they're feeling a bit shy, or maybe they are preparing for more critical inquiries themselves. So let's hope that they would come up with new observations. So thank you all of you, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am,
you, Sunayan.
for attending the session and for giving us this idea of arranging such a session. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.